In this video, we're essentially going to create a game over. So when this timer slider runs out of time, that is when the game will be over. But then what exactly do we want to happen? We want a couple things to happen. First of all, once that timer hits 0, we want the player position to be frozen. So we don't want the user to be able to move that player around anymore. Also, we want the option, so we want a text to pop up giving the user an option to restart or play again. And if they choose to play again, we need to go ahead and reload this scene. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Go into our game manager script, and we're going to figure out when the game ends. So when that game is over. And that's when the current time reaches 0. So since this timer countdown is called within the update, we're going to go ahead and put this code within timer countdown. So this first line of code is where the time changes. While that time is greater than 0, we want the play to continue. As soon as this current time hits 0, we want the gameplay to stop. So let's go ahead and write an if statement. So if current time is greater than 0, we want to go ahead and continue the countdown. Else, we want to initiate some game over. So let's go ahead and write code for game over. Void game over, parentheses, and then an open bracket and a close bracket. So once we reach game over, we want that text to pop up asking the user if they want to start again. Going back into Unity, we can reuse this question text and have a new question posed there. So let's go ahead and say question posed, because that's the text variable that we use. We're going to say that question posed is going to say game over, and then we're going to want them to be able to reset the game. So for now, let's say hit spacebar to play again. So let's go ahead and within our else statement, call the game over. And we need this to be .text. Before I forget to change that, save this, and let's go ahead and test it in Unity. I'll go ahead and fast forward. Now it says game over, hit spacebar to play again. Now as you can see, we can still move our player, and when we hit spacebar, nothing happens. So let's work on those now. Let's go ahead and freeze our player. So in order for the user to no longer be able to move the player, we need to change the speed. And we need to set that speed as 0. So we're going to say player for the player script dot speed equals 0. And that's because this speed is a variable within the player script. Now we need to go into the player script and adjust this speed. Currently, the speed variable is public and the type is float. We need to leave this as public so that we can access it within the game manager, but we need to change it to static. Once we change it to static, we no longer have access to it within the inspector. Remember how we changed it in one of the earlier videos from 5 to 10, and then we settled on 5 as our speed? Let's go ahead and just set that as 5. So speed equals 5. So now speed is no longer able to be adjusted within the inspector, so just make sure if you do still want to change the speed, adjust it within the script. Go ahead and save both the player and game manager script. Go back into Unity, and I'll go ahead and fast forward to the end, but you'll see that the player can move. And once the game ends, the player can no longer move. So we have the text displayed that says game over, hit spacebar to play again. We have the player speed set to 0 so that the user can no longer move the player. And now we just need to be able to reset. So remember we said hit spacebar to play again. That spacebar is going to be our input key to reload the level. So we're going to say within game over, if input dot get key down, which returns true during the frame when the user starts pressing down the key, and that's going to be key code dot space. So for the space key. So basically, if the space bar is pressed, so if the space bar key is the input, so if that key is pressed down, then we want to reload the level. Now previously I've used application loaded level, but to reload the level, we're going to use scene manager. So we're going to have to state that we're using that at the top. So using Unity Engine dot scene management. Scrolling back down, if the space was pressed down, we're going to say scene manager dot load scene, and the scene we're going to load is our main scene. So within the string, we're going to say main, because if you remember, going back into Unity, our scene is called main. Go ahead and save this, and let's test it out. Fast forwarding. At the end, the game over text pops up within the question text. Our player is frozen, and when we hit spacebar, it loads the scene, which in turn resets our score and resets the time. So going through this one more time, within our timer countdown, as long as the current time is greater than 0, it's going to do current time minus equals time.delta time, so the time's going to count down, and then it adjusts the slider accordingly. If current time is no longer greater than 0, then it's going to go into game over. Our game over says that the question post text changes to game over, hit spacebar to play again, the player speed is set to 0 so that the player is frozen in place, and if that user hits the spacebar, we're going to reload the main scene, which will reset our score and reset the time. Remember to save your script and to save your scene in Unity. Now we have the basics of our game. Our player moves, attempts to select the right question, and when the correct question is chosen, our score is adjusted, and when the time ends, our player is frozen and it gives us a chance to start again. So this video ends the structure of the game. In the next videos, we'll go over different attributes or different stylings to the game. So we'll add in certain player sprites, adjust the animation, do a background that scrolls, and we'll also go over adding sounds. So continue on to the next video to see what we're going to start on first. Also remember to like my video, subscribe to my channel, and as always, please feel free to comment below.